Hey there, welcome to the Stormwater World podcast. After 10 years in the stormwater industry, I feel like I've only scratched the surface of all there is to learn. I believe there are a lot of people just like me who are curious, but we're all just so busy. So I'm going to ask the questions so we can get the answers together. My name is Ty Garman, and I'm your host. Join me as we learn about what is happening in the stormwater world. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Stormwater World podcast. Today, we are going to talk about with the capital the best management practice with a friend of mine, Mr. Barry Fagan. Let me do a little introduction for Barry. Barry is a PE, a PLS, an EMVSP, an ABC, a 123. I'm just kidding. A CPESC, a CPM, an SM, an SSW. In stormwater, he's a stormwater and sustainability professional who supports infrastructure development at the intersection of built and natural environments. Barry's expertise is based on decades of managing stormwater programs and infrastructure projects and promoting environmental responsibility in transportation, renewable energy, and urban settings. Barry and his wife, Tracy, created Fagan Consulting, LLC to further their mission of helping good people deliver livable, sustainable, and resilient infrastructure. Barry, welcome to the pod. How are you, sir? Good morning.
Great. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you. So right out of the gate, before we get into our conversation and we break down what is the best management practice, you're going to have to unpack that biography there. So tell us a little bit about what you've done and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I'm not a huge fan of long biographies, especially in conference and interview settings. It's awkward for everyone. So I have in the past a few times just said my biography is Barry loves dirt, he loves water, and he loves the challenge of keeping those two separated. So
my gosh, wait, what the heck? We should have done that one. I like that one way better. Yeah, let's do that. I'm starting over. Barry loves dirt, he loves water, and he likes to keep those two separated. All right, take it away, Mr. Fagan.
Yeah. That's better. Yeah, so my background is in DOTs. I guess I started work for the Alabama DOT. Actually, during college, worked for them for 26 years here in Alabama, and then retired in 2016. Went to work for a medium to large size consulting firm, Volkert. And then a little over a year ago, my wife and I started our own consulting firm, just doing the same stuff I've enjoyed doing for the last 15 or 20 years, actually, just helping good people get better at managing stormwater. And, I'm working for DOTs with their stormwater programs and projects, and working for a few solar developers here in the Southeast. Actually, got a chance to go out to Montana to work on a solar site a few months ago, and then helping other folks either stay out of trouble or helping them to get out of trouble once they're in trouble. So that's
So let me back up. How many years have we been playing with dirt and water then?
Well, 2002 was really when I dug into the combination of dirt and water. I was way into dirt before then in the construction world.
Okay.
2002, I volunteered to help out. AlDOT was in some trouble on the regulatory side related to construction stormwater, and I volunteered to help out, and that kind of changed my career. Not kind of, it did change my career trajectory.
Gotcha. I got you. So with all that experience, right? So you've boiled it down after seeing quite a many of things in your career across, I guess now what we would say the public side with the DOT or the government side, the consulting side. You've got it all down to one best management practice, and I don't want to steal your thunder. So let everybody have it. What is the best management practice, and kind of defend your thesis for us?
Yeah. Well, I think communication is the best management practice, and for I guess the reason I got into communication is well, number one, I suck at it, and if you don't believe me, ask my wife.
Well, I tell everybody, hey, they're like, well, how do you start a podcast? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just willing to suck long enough to where I don't suck. And so I feel like I'm still in the suck phase too, honestly. So we're in trouble, Barry. So we'll see how this goes.
So I started getting interested in leadership and management probably, I don't know, 25 years ago maybe, and I kept bumping up against this fact that it's really hard to lead people or influence people or even work with people if you can't communicate. And I'm I guess a born introvert, and no offense, but I don't care too much for hanging out with people. One on one is good, but conference small talk, and I don't do well with that. I'm worn out at the end of after this interview here. I prepared for it, and afterward I'll be zapped for a while, and but I'm smart enough that I can learn a skill, and that's what I've been working on
Right.
for the last
That's right.
20 or so years, and also see that within our stormwater world, as you get older, you start seeing a bigger picture, and you start looking beyond the how and the what, and you start looking at why. And if you look at why we do what we're supposed to be doing as stormwater professionals, and the things that get in our way, the reasons why we haven't met our goals over the years, it all has a basis or a rooting in a lack of effective communication. And so that's been kind of my mission for the last couple of years, is to help folks get better at managing communication. A lot of your listeners, some of your listeners maybe that have heard me speak in the past, they're familiar with the 5 pillars of construction stormwater management, and those are manage communication first, and then manage water, erosion, and sediment. But too often we start out trying to manage sediment, which by itself is ineffective, and we end up back talking to our lawyer, talking to the reporter, talking to the regulator, and so we always end up back at communication, and it's way cheaper and more effective if we'll start there.
So you feel like that's it, right? Like that's all the issues kind of boil down to like, and you know what? I have to agree. I think probably a lot of issues just in general in life kind of boil down to, pick up the phone, the email. There's just a lot. I feel like there's a lot of loss of translation now in our text message emoji world that at some point, I think that's something I've always done is at some point the emails, it can't be an email anymore. There's no feelings in an email, right? You got to pick up the phone. You need to talk to that person before it escalates, and that everybody's so far off the page that, like you said, now all the powers that be, whatever situation that you're in, whether it's regulators or lawyers or whatever, and it's like, man, this probably didn't have to get to this point.
Yeah, and communication is so many different things, and I think one of the ways we become more effective communicators is realize what effective communication is, and that's when our intended message is received by the intended audience or listener. And so you've got to have a sender, you've got to have a receiver, and you've got to have an effective message that comes across as you intended. And you think about start way back with the Clean Water Act that turned 50 last year, and some of the goals that were set along. One of those goals was to restore the quality of our waters by 1985, and we're at, or 1983. Sorry, that's 40 years ago. We had a goal, a deadline, and that goal and deadline came and went 40 years ago, and we're not talking about it. We didn't really celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act and talk about those challenges. And I think the groups like the American Society of Civil Engineers, they're doing a great job with the America's Infrastructure Report Card. And for the first time ever in history of that report card in 2021, the ASCE added stormwater infrastructure as one of the critical elements of our nation's infrastructure, which is absolutely great news that we're finally at the adult table But the bad news is we got a D on our first report card we brought home. It was a solid D.
Oh
And,
man, wow.
some folks say that gives us room to grow, but that's not what my parents said when I brought home my first D.
Yeah,
You're
yeah, yeah.
at risk.
I think
You're struggling, and yeah, we need some
yep.
help. So I think ASCE is doing a good job of bringing that to light, and then states are coming along. We in Alabama, we graded our stormwater infrastructure for the first time last year, and we thought we were doing better than the nation, but we couldn't bring ourselves up to a C minus. We're at a solid D plus, just so we can brag about that, I guess, to others.
So, oh my gosh. But I got a question, or I'd like your thoughts on it, from a communication standpoint, because me as a person that's only been in the industry for going on 12 years, and I just, I came from a lot faster pace industry, I guess I could say. I've always been in some sort of sales. So the cycles are slow in our industry, as you know. Like it seems like everything moves a little slower in the stormwater world. Um, but 12 years in, and you just said like 40 years in, and we kind of missed the mark, and we didn't really really revisit it as far as the celebration of the Clean Water Act and where are we and what are we doing. Um, but from that communication standpoint to the general public, okay, so I look at it like people still don't even get it. Like they don't even realize. Like I talk to people all the time. They're like, "Hey, what do you do?" And I'm like, I gotta kind of explain like what industry I'm in, right? Like this, stormwater industry. And a lot of people they don't even realize it that water is not treated. That like they care. Now people care. Like, see, I live in as you know, I live in Southeast Texas, and so I live in hurricane land. So people care about storms, and they terribly care about the water that comes from storms in terms of hurricanes and flooding. But when it comes from an environmental compliance standpoint or just the quality of that water or what we're doing, they really still don't really get it. And so what are your thoughts on our efforts and on that side of things? Like you mentioned it, we have to have a message, but that message has to have a listener. And I really don't think that people, unless it affects them directly, I think they're so wound up in their own lives, right? Like, so we've got the black water, wastewater, we got that figured out, right? Flush the toilet, goes away.
Uh,
But I tell you what, if it started backing up into the streets, people would really care, right? Or if the
well,
toilet didn't work, they'd care. But on stormwater, what's the answer there, or what's your thoughts on the stormwater side of that equation?
Well, it's all about how we're communicating with the public. We talk to each other, all the time. We talk in circles and we gripe about this and gripe about that, and we even
Yep.
sometimes say we've got the black water figured out, like you just mentioned. But
You right, right. But
all
do we?
beaches all along the Gulf Coast, they're closed quite often for water
Oh,
quality
okay.
issues. And who do we blame that on in the media? We say heavy rains caused, this beach to be closed. But the fact is, heavy rains were a part of it, but it's really because of the wastewater treatment plant was not equipped to handle all the infiltration it was receiving from those rainwaters. And so you've got poop flowing out into the streams, and that's closing your beach. It's not the heavy rain. Take,
Yeah, I know.
when we have in South Alabama, we had a sinkhole. In the news, it was a sinkhole developed in a small town. And, talk about heavy rains and developing this. When we think about sinkhole, that's a natural phenomenon. You've got a limestone cavity down there that gives way or something. But in reality, it wasn't a sinkhole. It was the 40-year-old corrugated metal pipe had rusted away to the point where it was no longer supporting the soil around it. And so I think we, in a way to kind of, we call ourselves relating to or communicating with the public, trying to use these general terms, but we're pointing them away from what the real problem is. And that's, a failing infrastructure that's either causing the infrastructure itself to give way or causing the quality of our waters to be poor. And
You know,
so,
you, No, go ahead. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. You
Well,
finish that
one
thought.
thing we have kind of latched on here in Alabama, the Alabama Stormwater Association, we were kind of seeing this and saw some opportunity in the Birmingham, Alabama area. There's been some really significant flooding in that area, and so we saw that opportunity to tie. It's not just that it's raining much harder than it has been in the past. That's true also, but we have an infrastructure issue, and so we were able to we put together an event called the ASA Table Talks, and we brought in not just stormwater inspectors and stormwater this and stormwater that. We brought in mayors and public works directors and city engineers, and we talked about funding and opportunities for funding and the real source of those flooding issues in that area. And I think we're going to have to do more of that, and lean on the ASCE's report card and that sort of thing, and actually talk to people
Yeah.
about stormwater. We can't just keep talking to each other about stormwater.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. But I don't want to get too far off our main topic today of communication. However, you brought up the infrastructure thing, and I'd like to get your opinion on just that as from a like a 30,000 foot uh, viewpoint, because I feel like all over the news and all over things that I read and see is that we really kick the can down the road on you know capital improvement projects from city to city and just state to state, just all over the country. It feels like that we just like, did we just kind of turn a blind eye and feel like a lot of our infrastructure is going to last forever, or what the heck? I mean, I feel like we're going to have some big problems over the next few decades as far as failing infrastructure. Do you agree with that, or what are your thoughts as for what
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
seen?
absolutely. The fact that we have a D as our grade, that indicates a real problem. That's
Right.
my parents
That's true.
were, if you're coasting at a C, then you're just one goof up away from disaster, and I was full of goof ups. And so if you're at a D, that means you've got significant issues and it needs immediate attention to get that grade up to a place where you have some cushion. In our stormwater world, we don't get to decide how much it rains or how often it rains or how hard it rains. We don't get to decide, how much room do we have to work in and our budgets, and so we've got to build ourselves some cushion. And right now we have no cushion. We're working at capacity, and then when something goes wrong, a pipe fails, then we're having to have emergency, committee meetings and emergency funding, and that's not an effective or certainly not an efficient way to be using our tax dollars to address storm infrastructure issues. But it is, you're exactly right. We do have a problem, and on top of that problem, then you've got changes associated with climate to our rain, and that's
Right.
it's a bad situation, and the only way through that is through with communication.
Yeah. So let's bring it back to some light. I mean, this is pretty heavy. It's kind of heavy stuff. Because it's real, and I think to get back on, your line of communication and the importance of it, I think we need to throw out there to everybody too that the communication it's not always and it can't be. It shouldn't be a top down. It should not be a top down thing. Okay. What do I mean by that? Well, years ago, and I don't know if it's this way still. I would hope it still is. But years ago, I saw a story where, when Disney World was just the greatest thing on earth, which I guess it's still supposed to be, but I don't know. I always go to Universal when I go to Florida, but that's a whole nother conversation. Anyways, back to my story. Um, Anybody that worked for Disney, from the person that was cleaning up around the park to a ride operator to the characters to anybody that was employee at Disney World, had the right, with no repercussions to themselves or their job, to stop a ride. If they saw something they thought was unsafe, they could say something and that ride would be stopped. And there, of course, if you stop a ride at Disney, I mean, you think about the hours of wait and the disgruntled customers and the loss of, whatever, that's a big thing to stop a ride. But anybody could stop a ride. And I think that that level of communication definitely needs to also be, and you know touch on it. I think it's one of our points in our notes of why of that it shouldn't necessarily be top down messages that anybody, if you're in the stormwater world, you have the ability to make a difference, no matter you know quote unquote what level you feel like you're at. Would you want to expound on kind of that thought process, Barry?
Yeah, sure. There's no doubt in my mind or in my experience that having the support of leadership and management, having that support can take your program much further, much faster. However, and we stormwater professionals, we may be in a traditional position of authority. We may be the project manager. We may be, even the division manager or whatever it might be. But most of the time we're inspectors, and that inspector absolutely has influence. And that was a lesson I had to teach myself, coming up in the Alabama DOT. You can sit in your seat and gripe about what leadership's not doing, or you can recognize that, hey, I actually do have a circle of influence. Now my circle may be smaller now than I would hope. It may be only a few people, or it may be limited to one project or only one part of the state. But within that circle of influence, I can make a difference. And I think that it's up to us stormwater professionals to keep reminding ourselves of why we do what we do. That it's not about checking boxes and pushing paper. It's about actually making sure that we're doing our best, the best that can be done to protect the environment, protect water quality, and to ensure that we're working in a way that's compliant with regulation. And we have the ability to have that influence. And even if we're not working for that particular group, I'll tell you a quick story. On one of my projects, there's an inspector, and on this project, I'm providing kind of an environmental quality assurance. I come in once every couple of weeks and give them an extra set of eyes, and there's an inspector on that project that I asked him for some information the other day. He shot it back to me immediately, and I said, wow, thanks for the service. And he said, well, when the boss speaks, I'm going to deliver. And I said, hey, I'm going to let you in on a secret here. I'm not your boss. It was a reminder to me that I've got some influence with this inspector, and because I do have that influence, I have a responsibility to guide this young person new in the stormwater world. I have a responsibility to guide him, even though I don't sign his paycheck. He doesn't even work for the same company. Actually, I'm working for Aldot. He's an Aldot inspector, and if anything, he's my boss. But we just never know what kind of influence we have on others, and if we can kind of create a professionalism within ourselves, and really do our homework and be on top of our game, create within ourselves the most obvious expert. You said earlier, Ty, that I would be the expert in the room, or most knowledgeable about this topic, or whatever it was you said.
100%. 100%. I said you're the smartest person in this conversation, so don't let the nerves get to you. That's it. And we're gonna be just fine, Barry.
So we can position ourselves as being the expert in the room. And if your job is to be the stormwater inspector, then you ought to know more than anybody on this planet about what that project looks like in terms of stormwater inspection, and then use that influence to guide others.
Well, and I'll say this, and I don't know that situation, but I'll be willing to bet, in having spoke to you over the years, that that inspector, he may say, well, I got to get the boss what he needs, right? And so that's a little tongue in cheek there. Let me get you that stuff real quick. But a key to communication, I think the best communicators are the best listeners, right? So if I provide you a bunch of information that falls on deaf ears, my desire to continue to provide that information to you in a timely fashion is going to diminish, right? So I would be willing to bet the reason why I get you the information as well in a timely fashion quickly is because you actually look at that information, you assess that information, you give him feedback, and then everybody continues to move forward together. So he feels like he is an integral part of the solution. And so that's just a whole nother key side of, we had defined the communication as, delivering a message and having a receiver, but at the same time, to me, if not 50%, maybe 75% is you got to listen. You got to listen. You got to hear the message. I think there's a lot of us, and just in our lives, we just get so busy. On to the next thing. On to the next thing. You mentioned it before. Just let's not check the boxes. Let's actually try to do the right thing, for whatever project we're working on. And I think that's what it all kind of boils down to. We just kind of keep circling it back, right? Like, are we taking in what is given to us? Are we open to receiving that message and what's happening on this project, so we can actually, provide our input and make a win-win solution for everybody? But I'd say you're probably doing pretty well on your communication journey, and that's also probably why that inspector respects, quote unquote, that boss role that you hold, is because, one, you don't treat him like that, and two, I'm sure you give him the feedback so that he can do better at his job. Um, so we've got, so I give everybody that comes on the pod, I give them, hey, give us some bullet points. Let's talk about, what you want to talk about. And it's my job to kind of keep the conversation rolling in that direction. But I got this third bullet point, and I think it's pretty cool and interesting. And so I want to, I'm interested to see, what's your thoughts on it, because it's you're it's your bullet point, but I'm just going to read it, right? So I'm just going to straight out read it, and then for everybody. So and then you can kind of expound, like, what do you mean by that, like, and so we can kind of discuss it together. But it's, we can't hope to influence people that we aren't willing to hang out with. What, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So that lesson actually came to me probably 15 years ago. My son was in a youth group at church, and I was leading these guys, and we were talking about influencing others and being influenced by others, and that lesson kind of came to me there in that setting. But I started applying that thinking at work, and to give you a quick example, the Alabama DOT, we have several river keepers and other environmental advocacy groups here in Alabama. And for years and years, those two entities, ALDOT and the environmental groups, were on completely opposite sides of the fence. And, we stayed on our side and we threw rocks over the fence at the others, and they did the same to us. And, we had a big project coming up, and our transportation director, John Cooper, who's still transportation director today, he said, Barry, we need to set up a meeting with those people. It was one particular group. And I said, really? And he said, why in the world would we not talk to the people who pay our salaries? And I said, yes, sir. And I reached out and said, hey, we'd like to come sit down with you and talk. And they nearly fell out of their chairs that we were willing to talk. And so we physically sat down together and started talking about what their concerns were, what our concerns were. And so we understood more about the Cahaba River in this case, and what the sensitivities were. And this group, the Cahaba River Society, learned more about what our limitations were and what it takes to build a roadway. And at the end of the day, we realized that they don't want us to destroy the Cahaba River, and we didn't want to destroy the Cahaba River or impacted species. So we had an element in common. And so I started recognizing that we were actually influencing their thinking, but at the same time, they were influencing our thinking. And so I think I saw a quote the other day. It said something about your opinions don't change the world, your actions do. And so if you're willing to sit down with someone and hang out with them, maybe even in their setting, in their world, go paddling with them, and in this case, maybe, they start to see you as human. And we all know that humans have the potential to make mistakes because they're just like us. And so once you see someone as human and having the ability to make a mistake or not have the exact same interests as you, you start to develop a little bit of grace and understanding, and when something does go wrong, some forgiveness. And you know, I used to encourage the ALDOT folks, let's at least make it appear that our heart is in the right place. I tell some of our maintenance folks, I'd say, look, you don't have to care about the environment. I just need you to act like you care about the environment. Let's make it look like we care about this place, and that really goes a long way. Good, and you know, it's not all about appearances. When somebody can tell
Right. No,
your
I understand.
heart's in
Right.
the right place, but that it's hard to get to that if you're not willing to hang out with someone and physically get
I
into their
gotcha.
space and talk to them.
Well, I mean, you joke about, act like, you care or whatever, and it's kind of funny how if you act like something long enough, you start to slip up and actually care, right? So it's not so you kind of tricking them into caring, honestly, because I mean, I'm not an environmentalist. I don't, by any stretch of the means, imagination. But after being in this industry for 12 years, it's not hard not to get it on you. I definitely care about quality of water way more than I did 12 years ago, right?
Yeah,
So, a little bit of fake it till you make it, thought process there. But the other side of that, what I've heard you say is, common ground. You gotta, it's hard. Sometimes you just think, man, there's just no way. There's no way I have any common ground with this person or this organization. But again, that just, if you want to have a win-win, if you're trying to create a win-win situation through the communication that that you're trying to go back and forth, you got to find a way to find some sort of common ground. And for you all in that example, the common ground was you guys both wanted to protect the body of water, and sometimes the common ground. I mean, when I read that bullet point of yours, I thought, man, I'm like you. I'm an introvert by nature. Like people are like, when you're not an introvert, I'm like, oh yeah, I really am. Because I define introvert as how do you charge your battery? Some people charge their battery by being in that crowd. I do not. So I can do this call with you. I can be at those conferences. I can do it for 3 days and talk to all the people. And it seems like I am not an introvert and I am wore out, right? And so from that communication standpoint, like you're saying, when I read that, I thought, man, there's plenty of people I really don't want to hang out with, right? Like, so in order to influence people, I got to be willing to hang out with them. But I think what I heard you say too is you got to be open. You got to be open to the conversation, because even if the common ground is they've got a job to do and you've got a job to do, man, isn't life better if you can do it without the angst and the combativeness of a situation, and everybody understands that they have a job to do. We're just trying to get to an end
yeah,
solution so
and
everybody can go home.
even
You
if you
know,
don't have anything in common, just the fact that you would reach out and say, "Hey,
and
let's
be
sit down and
willing.
talk through this." That's communication. Also, is showing a willingness
Right.
to be open to at least hear what's going on the other side there. Yeah, you're
Right.
right.
To the willingness to listen, that other side of the big coin. Well, I love this. I love communication because again, I've always been in sales or whatnot. So I think communication and the ability to, people hate sales, and I've always been like, I mean, I don't understand. Like, I, as long as you have good intention, if I have good intention and I believe in the message that I'm delivering to you, then I'm just really trying to take you down a path and try to figure out, how can I provide you value, right? How can I provide you value? And then either you decide that you like that, or you don't like that. It's just a process of understanding somebody's needs and filling that needs with something that is actually valuable, and not, I think people they get caught up in the the salespeople that aren't built that way, I guess. But that's the introvert side of me. It's a process, right? It's not just all jibber jabber. It's just not all talking. It's like, hey, this is a good idea. Like, we should come together and work toward this common goal together. And I think that's a lot of what you're talking about. Hey, before we go, what's going on? So, I mean, again, I could talk about communication until the cows come home. But what's going on with you and Fagan Consulting? What's happening? What's next? What are you guys going to be any conferences? You got some projects going on? What's going specifically in your world?
Yeah, well, right now I'm in a pretty sweet spot. My wife she's doing some technical work, but her main work is taking care of the business, and what that
Go
does.
ahead, rub it in that you retired and now you've got your own gig, and so and now you're telling me that Mama's running the show. All right, go ahead.
So
Why am I interviewing? Wait, why am I interviewing you? Then what happened? Why am I interviewing you, Barry? Where's Tracy? Can we get her on the phone, please?
she's busy. So
Yeah, she's busy. She's busy doing the things.
yeah.
Just go ahead.
So I'm getting to do the work I love to do, and that's help good
That's
people get
awesome.
better at managing stormwater. I'm going to continue to do that. I've actually got a pretty cool relationship going with Auburn University. We're developing a self-contained and portable stormwater treatment device right now. I'll tell you more about that in about 6 months. Um,
Sounds like there's patents out there and hush
yeah,
hush, and
it's
so
going to be cool. Also helping
very
to
cool, very cool.
formally stand up the Alabama Stormwater Association. We're a legitimate
Oh,
501c3 now, and got a lot of cool
congratulations!
things coming with that. I've been invited to deliver the keynote talk at the Hawaii DOT Protect Our Water conference coming up in November. So there's one more
What?
thing I've got to rub in there, Ties. I'm getting to go to
Oh my, I
Hawaii.
know, right? Like, oh my gosh, that's good. And our thoughts out and prayers out to those that were affected
Yeah,
by the wildfires in Hawaii. That's the videos that I've seen is just horrific. It's crazy. So, yeah,
absolutely.
but hey, congratulations on getting that opportunity. Yeah, I swear I've got 3 or 4 friends in the industry. Like, there's some projects going on in Hawaii, and so everybody that I know, I feel like I talk to, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to Hawaii. I gotta go," and either their company's paying for it or whatever. And I'm like, "Oh, that's very nice, very
Yeah.
nice." So yeah, well, congratulations on that.
And so
What's the
on
best way
this
to get? Oh yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
on this topic of communication, there'll be an IECA
Yeah.
environmental connection article coming out in the next month or so about the best
Oh,
management
that's right.
practice.
I almost forgot. I almost forgot. This, folks, this is a teaser. This podcast is a teaser for an article that will be coming out in the ICA Connection that Barry wrote. Right now, was that just a written article on your whole thesis or on the communication process, or was it an
Yeah,
interview
that's
style article? Did they
all
interview
about
you?
the best management practice communication. So some of what
Okay,
we've talked about today.
awesome. I got you. I got you. Right, right. So you can get some more information and some more details on that at the on the IECA connection. And we're not sure. Like maybe you can see it. Like we were talking before we started recording. You might be able to see that article on the online version in September, but it'll definitely be in the print version in October. Is that what we're thinking?
It's the October issue, and I'm not sure
October
exactly
issue.
when that
Oh,
gets
okay. Oh,
published.
when it comes out, when it comes out. Okay, October issue. October issue. Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, you got any parting thoughts, any kind of things you want to share with the listeners before we go? It could be anything. We have touched on quite a few things today. So,
Yeah,
and
I
where can
think.
they and where can they get in touch? And where can they get in touch? What's the best way to get in touch with you, Barry? If anybody
Yeah.
has questions.
So our website is FaganLLC.com. Pretty simple. I'm Barry at FaganLLC.com. There is a FaganConsulting.com. That's not us. That's a highway toll collection firm in Texas. That FaganLLC.com, and of course LinkedIn anytime.
That, that's that's funny. That's funny. So, anything else? Any other thoughts? Anything we missed, or that you would want to say to
Yeah,
everybody before we go?
just just some reminders. We're all in positions of influence, no matter where we sit in the organizational structure. We all have that circle of influence. We've got an obligation to get better every day in all that we do, including, how we influence other people, how we communicate. And I would just encourage everyone to keep showing up, keep trying to get better at technically getting better, communication, personal, interpersonal skills. Just try to keep showing up. And Ty, I will say that I want to say thank you for being a consistent part of our our stormwater world for the last 12
Oh,
or
wow.
14
Thank
years,
you.
however long you've been doing that. I've really started to appreciate those faces that I see every time I go to a national conference, or even in our state. We have some folks that have been supporting those events from day one, and it's
Yes,
pretty
sir.
cool. And I think some of the people I respect most is because of their consistency. Either it's in their consistency of character or consistency of showing up, or whatever. So I
I really
share
appreciate that.
of helping good people get better at managing stormwater.
Thanks for coming on the pod, Barry. I appreciate that. Everybody, 1% better every day. You don't have to be 100% better tomorrow. All you got to do is keep showing up, like you said, 1% better every day. You'd be surprised with what you can do. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it. And I guess you know what? Before I let you go, are you going to be are you going to come to Dallas? Are you coming to Dallas? StormCon? No? Yeah?
One thing I've learned with my new company is if I'm not working, I'm not making money, and
Oh, that is true.
no one's
That
paying
is true.
my airfare and registration fees anymore. So I got to be more
So I
serious.
got you. I got you. So
I'll miss
but
StormCon.
but you already said you're in your sweet spot. So you're out there in the field doing the thing. So all right, well we'll miss you at StormCon. We'll be there, but we'll talk to you soon. And hey everybody. So Barry's going to give us that. He's going to give us that exclusive when he drops that product on us. That portable stormwater treatment device. He's going to come back on the pod and talk about it when it comes out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm putting you on the spot. I'm joking.
No,
You do
that'd
not
be
have to
great.
do that. But I would love to have you on if you'd like to come on. And I appreciate your time today, sir. Take care.
Thanks, Ty.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Stormwater World Podcast. Do you have something you'd like to discuss? Do you have an opposing opinion regarding something you heard during this episode? Let's talk about it. Click on the link in the show notes to sign up for a future episode. I'd love to visit with you about what's happening and how you see things unfolding in your stormwater world.